Welcome to the lesson on multiplying and dividing integers. Today we're going to talk about strategies in order to multiply and divide integers. Just like we did when we had adding integers, we use color coding, we use the counters or the chips, we use the highlighters, and we also looked at vectors. Today we're going to look at some silly stories to help us with this. So after looking for patterns when we multiply positive and negative integers, we can see that it can be confusing to decide what the sign of the product is, and that should say is behind it. Often in math, we try to find different strategies to help us remember how to find an answer. Today we're going to learn about two strategies. Our first strategy is called Murphy-Dillon. Murphy-Dillon is a bit unusual looking. He has a triangle-shaped head. His mouth looks like a plus sign and his eyes look like minus signs. So let's draw that. His mouth looks like a plus sign and his eyes look like two minus signs. So would you please draw Murphy-Dillon's head? It goes on to say we can use Murphy-Dillon's face to help us figure out which sign to use when we multiply and divide integers. All we need to do is to cover up the signs of the integers that are given, and the leftover sign is the sign of our answer. So let's practice. Before we go on, I don't know if you noticed this, but Murphy-Dillon is named after multiplying and dividing. And the most important sentence in here, we cover up the signs of the integers that were given. And in order to figure out what the sign is, the leftover sign is our answer, sign of the answer. So let's try this. First, use Murphy-Dillon's head to figure out the sign of the answer. Then multiply or divide as if the number were all positive. So we're going to start by drawing Murphy-Dillon's head right next to the problem. And he has two minus signs or negative signs for eyes and a plus sign or a positive sign for his mouth. So now we're going to look at the two problems that we have, the two numbers that we have. I'm noticing that I have a -5, so we're going to cover up that negative sign, and we have a -6, so we're going to cover up that other negative sign, and the answer is going to be positive. So we now know that the answer is positive. And then we're going to just multiply 5 times 6, as if they were normally positive numbers, to get 30. Let's try letter B. Again, we start by drawing Murphy-Dillon's head. And as a reminder, he has 2 negative eyeballs and 1 positive mouth. So what signs do you think we're going to cover up this time? If you said the plus sign for the 3 and one of the negative signs or a positive sign for the 3 and a negative sign for the 8, you are correct. And the leftover sign is a negative, so our answer is going to be negative. So now we just look at this as 3 times 8, and the answer is -24. Please try letter C on your own. If we look at our Murphy-Dillon face, we covered up the negative sign, one of the negative eyeballs for the 9, and the positive mouth for the 2. So we have leftover negative. That's the sign of our answer. And just to remind you, when numbers are side by side, that's our new way of multiplying. So side by side means multiply. Let's do letter D. The beautiful thing is this Murphy-Dillon also works when we're dividing. Using Murphy-Dillon's face, please tell us what the sign of the answer is. If you said the answer is negative, you're correct. It's negative. And now we're going to ask ourselves, how many 5s does it take to get to 40? I'm dividing 40 by 5. So how many groups of 5 do I need to make 40? And that's 8. So the answer is -8. Now this is new to us. When we see this, what looks like fraction bar, that actually means division. So I'd like you to pause, and I want you to tell what the final answer is. This is negative 24 divided by negative 4, and we can use Murphy-Dillon again. Said positive 6, that's correct. Pause again and try letter F. The answer is negative, and we're going to ask ourselves how many groups of 8 does it take to get 32, and there are 4 groups of 8, and the answer is negative 4. Now, the advantage of Murphy-Dillon is it's the same face repeatedly. We just have to use it based on what's given. Now we're going to look at a different strategy. So please turn to the next page. This next strategy uses faces, and Mrs. Nord named these the Margar faces for our former student. When Margar is wide awake or fast asleep, she is happy. So we're going to draw faces that look like this. It says when Margar is wide awake, so that would look like this face. 2 positive eyeballs for being wide awake, and she's happy. So we're going to make a happy face using a positive sign. She's positive. She's happy. When Margot is fast asleep, meaning her eyeballs are 2 negative signs, then Margar is also happy. And when we're happy, we feel positive. So if you look at this, it says same signs. You're going to notice this would be working with 2 same sign numbers. This would also be 2 same sign numbers, and it turns out the answer is positive. So anytime you work with 2 same sign numbers when you're multiplying and dividing, you're going to get a positive answer. So the eyes represent the numbers we're working with, and the mouth represents the answer. Unlike Murphy-Dillon, we're going to draw separate faces every time we're working with 2 numbers. So now let's look at the next bullet. It says when Margar is half awake or half asleep, she's mad. So let's draw those 2 faces. So if she's half awake, so one eye is open and the other eye is closed, she's mad or negative. When Margar is half asleep, one eye is closed and the other eye is open, she's also mad. She's negative. So what this means is when I use 2 different sign numbers, when I'm multiplying or dividing them, the answer is going to be negative. So when we use different sign integers, when we're multiplying or dividing, the answer is negative. And so these rules are quite a bit different when we're multiplying and dividing than they are when we're adding. In fact, when we're adding, if we add 2 same sign numbers, we get a negative answer. When we're adding 2 negatives, they stay negative. And when we're working with different signs when we're adding, we actually have to choose a sign. It's not always negative. So this always is a little bit hard to keep these straight, so that's why we want to draw the faces. So now let's put it into play. When we use this strategy, we need to draw the specific face we need based on the signs of the numbers we're given next to the problem in order to figure out the sign of the product or quotient. Product is the answer to multiplication. Quotient is the answer to division. Then we ignore the signs and multiply or divide as usual. So let's practice this skill. We're going to start out by drawing a face, just a round circle next to it. I see I have a -3, so I'm going to use a negative eyeball, and a -4. I'm going to use a negative eyeball, and then I have to remember the story. You can look at the paper. It says when Margar's fast asleep, she's happy. So we're going to draw a positive for right now, and then we multiply 3 times 4. We can ignore the signs because we already know that the answer is going to be positive, and 3 times 4 is 12. So let's try this again. We're going to draw a face. What do you think the eyes will look like based on the 2 numbers that are given? The face should be a positive eyeball for 9 because it's positive, and a negative eyeball for 6 because it's negative. And the story says when Margar's half awake, she's mad, meaning that our answer is going to be negative. And then we ignore the signs and just take 9 times 6, which would be 54. Please try I on your own. What would the face look like? So now that we have the face, what do you think our final answer is for letter I? The answer is negative 56 because when Margar is half awake, she's mad. So once again, this works beautifully for division. It doesn't matter whether it's multiplying or dividing, we can still use the faces. So what face should I draw for letter J? If we look at our face here, it's a negative eyeball for 36, a positive eyeball for 4, and we're asking ourselves how many groups of 4 will it take to get 36? We already know from the face that our answer is going to be negative, and so our answer would be negative 9. Please pause and try letter E for us. This particular one's a tough rule. If she's fast asleep, she's happy. So we're used to adding 2 negatives and getting a negative, but when we multiply or divide 2 negatives, we get a positive answer. And 24s, it would take 20 groups of 4 to make 80. Try letter F, please. Because Margar is half awake, meaning positive 45 and negative 5, it's going to be a negative answer, and the answer is negative 9. So initially, as we learn how to multiply and divide integers, you're going to choose one of these methods. So please tell me now which method you think you're going to choose, Murphy-Dillon or the Margar faces. Thank you, and this concludes the lesson.